Michael Kugelman, your first reactions. Do you agree with KC Singh that this is essentially both sides have launched these strikes on each other, but you do not expect this to escalate in any manner?
Yes, I would agree. I mean, it's harder to read what could be coming next from the Iranian side, and that's what we have to be looking at the next few days. But I think from the perspective of Pakistan, they've got several good reasons not to want more escalations. One is they have so much internal turmoil, as you know, the economic stress, the political crisis, a resurgence of terrorism emanating from across another border in Afghanistan. So that's one thing. And also, keeping in mind the demographic factors, Pakistan has a Shia population of about 15 to 20% of its total population. It's the second largest Shia community in the world outside of Iran. So I think that for Pakistan, further escalations could pose risks to social stability as well. And indeed, I do think Pakistan would be receptive to mediation from China. And I agree that China, if there's any country that would be in a position to be an effective mediator, it's China. Iran may be a bit tougher to bring it around, but let's remember, just 2 years ago, Iran and China signed a 25-year partnership agreement, a strategic accord. Both Iran and Pakistan are heavily dependent on China for economic support. That gives Beijing leverage here. So I do think that in due course, we could expect China to have some success in getting the two sides to de-escalate. But, tensions are high, temperatures are high. Both of the countries hit by these attacks said that children were killed. So, given that, you can't expect de-escalation today. But I'd like to hope that cooler heads will prevail in the coming days, particularly with China there to try to get both sides to step away from the cliff.
And Andrew Leung, we've heard about both KC Singh and Michael Kugelman suggesting that China could well play the role of peacemaker, given Chinese interests both in Iran and Pakistan. Do you see China now playing a proactive role to ensure this doesn't escalate further?
Well, the success of China in brokering the historic rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran suggests that China is well positioned to broker peace in the Middle East. And of course, a peaceful Middle East is in every way in China's interest, bearing China's Belt and Road Initiative and other things. Above all, when the Muslim community has never been so united over Gaza, the last thing the Muslim community wants is a fracture with its own camp. So I think that for China, there is every advantage to broker a peace. And then as far as Iran is concerned, I don't think that Iran wants to escalate either. It's not in Iran's interest, because Iran is now riding on the crest of its increasing influence over with the rapprochement with Saudi Arabia, but also with even in the war on Gaza. So I think that Iran, again, doesn't want another thing, that the stumbling block.
Right.
But I think that this has happened because of some reflex action, and think that this could have been prevented if there was a sort of a telephone call in advance or negotiations in advance. But unfortunately, that's what's happened. But I don't think that escalation is in any party's interest in this game. And of course, it's in China's interest to see a peaceful situation returning to that part of the world.
KC Singh, all of this is coming on the back of what we've seen over the last 100 days in Gaza, and also the fact that we are seeing an escalation of a potential conflict across the region, which could bring in Lebanon, which could bring in Yemen, has already dragged in Yemen in a way. And Iran, many believe, is playing an increasingly influential role within radical Islamic societies. Do you see Iran's focus, therefore, primarily being on establishing a domineering presence in the Middle East and West Asia? What happened in Pakistan is not going to actually influence their main concern, which is exercising their sphere of influence in West Asia and the Middle East.
Absolutely correct. They've taken up the cause of the Palestinians right from the first, when the Islamic Revolution came in 1979. Right from that point, they've been anti-Israel. So this is part of their basic DNA of the Islamic government. So they feel that they've got Israel on the back foot. They would apply the pressure, Hezbollah is being restrained. I think Israel has been told that with an army of almost 100,000 men and with a tunneling system, which the North Koreans have helped them create in southern part of Lebanon, even the Americans have warned Israel that if you start something with Hezbollah, it's going to be much more expensive and much worse than their previous fighting with Hezbollah some years ago. So therefore, Iran would like to use their surrogates. They do come out in front like they did in the Red Sea when they found the Houthis were getting attacked. So they sent one naval vessel there, which couldn't do much to counter the Americans, but it was a symbolic presence there. So they would continue to use the Houthis. They would continue to cause the pain by increasing the freight and the insurance rates. And sooner or later, it will start affecting the food supplies, other supplies going into Israel. And that is their game. They would like to extend it.
So in a way,
to the point where Israel is forced to call a halt in Gaza.
Right.
They can't keep killing. They've gone to the southern part of Gaza now where most of the refugees are concentrated. How long can they continue their operations there? That is the issue. And now with the primaries starting off in America, it started impacting the public opinion in America. It's already impacting it. President Biden is looking helpless that he can't constrain Israel. And this can't go on the way it is. And we can see the implications. It's something like what Iran has done in retaliation for the suicide bombing in Kerman, that there will be provocations. Any single act can trigger a larger conflagration. And I think the Americans have to tell the Israelis that this has to be brought to a quick end. They can't finish Hamas.
For a moment,
Hamas leadership will remain. And therefore, they have to stop the fighting.
Can I just for a moment bring in Michael Kugelman on that? Michael Kugelman, is the real fear that America, Washington has, is this increasingly assertive Iran, particularly post what's been happening in Gaza, which is once again trying to assert its influence across the region. We're seeing what's happening in Yemen, and the fear is they will use the Hezbollah, if necessary, as their sword arm to further their influence in the region. And therefore, what's happening with Pakistan is not really the real issue. The real issue is what Iran does with America.
Absolutely. This is the U.S. fear. I mean, there's a lot happening in the Middle East, significant levels of destabilization. It's very complex. A lot of it is hard to make sense of. But if there is one common denominator, it's that a number of these violent actors that are causing these provocations are sponsored by Iran. And this is clearly very concerning for the United States. And this increasingly has economic and commercial impacts, given what the Houthis are doing, which of course prompted the U.S. to put together this military coalition to counter that. But yes, it's easy to forget these days that when the Biden administration first came to power, it was keen to try to improve relations with Iran. But those days are long gone. And I think you have to look back at the geopolitical context that long predates the beginning of the war in Gaza. Iran, for a long time, has been very concerned about recent developments, especially the Abraham Accords concluded during the Trump administration, which led to Israel concluding peace deals with a number of countries in the region, including some Arab Gulf states. This is very serious for Iran. This is one of the reasons why it's been doubling down on its support for these proxies, which is clearly something that's very worrisome for the U.S. and its allies and partners. So, yeah, indeed, this is I would argue that the U.S.-Iran relationship, it's been a long time since it's been as confrontational as it is now, and Tehran is very happily, or not happily, but is very willingly using asymmetric tactics such as proxy war to hit out at the United States and its allies, which again is very concerning for the Biden administration.